Hazel Harkness rose with the bees. Dawn was still stretching pale fingers across the North Yorkshire sky when she pulled on her green wellies and strode through the dew-heavy grass behind her cottage, Owlbrook Glen. The air smelled of lilac and wood smoke, and usually that blend was accompanied by the familiar low hum of 27 thriving colonies. This morning, half the meadow stood strangely silent. She stopped so abruptly that her border collie, Button, nearly collided with her knees. 2 long rows of cinder blocks sat empty, their metal hive straps dangling like loose scarf ends. Hazel's 3 most prized hives, her blue-striped Langstroths housing the rare Buckfast queens, had vanished. For a breath she imagined she might have moved them herself. When you keep bees for 20 years, dawns run together like honey on warm toast. But no, the grass beneath the missing hives was flattened in neat rectangles, the tracks in the wet earth as crisp as newsprint. Whoever had taken them had worked with gloved care, lifting without tipping. A beekeeper's touch, Button whimpered. Hazel knelt, ran her fingers across the indentation, and found a smear of pine resin. The thieves had sealed the hive entrances for travel, yet another sign of knowledge. Whoever they were, they had come prepared. She phoned Constable Rupert Finch, who arrived in his sputtering Minnie, sniffed the air, and declared the theft peculiar, but surely a prank. Hazel bit back the retort that no prankster in Bramblewick Hamlet would risk 6,000 angry insects. While Rupert jotted a perfunctory note, Hazel collected a sample of the resin in a little film canister, relic of her late husband Arthur's photography hobby, and tucked it into her anorak pocket. By 8 o'clock she was seated in the buttered crumpet tea room, nursing a pot of chamomile and the edges of her irritation. The tea room buzzed with gossip louder than any apiary. Mrs. Linton's runaway goat, the vicar's new bicycle, preparations for the Bracken County Summer Fair, scheduled to open in 3 days. When Hazel mentioned her missing hives, the chatter paused, then resumed with fresh vigour. "Mine went yesterday," sighed Lionel Dunn, an elderly gardener whose single top-bar hive pollinated the hamlet's allotments. "Thought the wind knocked it over, but the stand's clean gone." Across the room, teenager Wren Mallory piped up. "Grandad's skeps disappeared last week. He reckoned badgers, but even badgers don't carry off woven straw." Hazel's fingers tightened around her teacup. 3 incidents formed a pattern, one that Rupert Finch clearly was not going to connect. She left coins on the saucer and set off for the library, a converted stone chapel now draped in climbing roses. There she found her oldest friend, Marjorie Penwell, shelving large print mysteries. Marjorie listened, frowning behind tortoiseshell spectacles. "Could it be Albie Craven?" she whispered. "He's forever bragging he'll take the honey blue ribbon this year." Albie was a decent enough chap, but he had coveted Hazel's Buckfast line since she bred her first queen from imported stock. Still, he lived a mile east. It seemed foolhardy he would risk pilfering her hives when everyone knew they were hers. "I saw Albie in the feed store yesterday," Marjorie added, "buying foundation frames and muslin sacks." Not incriminating, Hazel thought, but notable. "Anyone else?" Marjorie hesitated. "Harriet Pike's back from Leeds, managing the Fairgrounds. City job fell through." Hazel remembered Harriet as a girl forever covered in blackberry stains and grand dreams. Their paths rarely crossed, but Hazel filed the name away. She returned home to inventory what remained. 17 hives hummed peacefully, unaware their sisters were in peril. She checked brood frames, noted nectar flow, then sealed each hive entrance with fresh wire mesh and added padlocks to the straps. Bees did not care for locks, but Hazel felt better. That evening, she dispensed jars of last year's heather honey to neighbours, a goodwill ritual she kept each June, and listened for rumours. Most villagers were too busy prepping for the fair, polishing vintage tractors, icing Victoria sponges, varnishing whittled duck decoys. Yet several admitted hearing an engine in the night near the meadows. If the hives were taken for resale, they could already be anywhere in the county. But if they were stolen to produce honey for the fair contest, they would need to remain near the nectar flow, at least until judging on Saturday. Hazel opened Arthur's old map on the kitchen table, circled reported thefts, and drew a rough radius of possible storage sites within a 50-mile drive. Her buckfast bees worked clover, wild thyme, and a ribbon of lavender she'd planted along the wood. No other local apiaries yielded such a distinctive lavender citrus bouquet. If she could locate honey with that flavour, she could trace it back to her bees. And the best place to taste a variety of local honey in one swoop? The county fair honey tent. Thursday morning, Hazel loaded 2 jars of reserve honey, a beeswax candle shaped like St. Cuthbert's cross, and Button into her battered Land Rover, and drove the winding road to the Bracken County Showgrounds. White marquees ballooned across the fields like giant toadstools. The air smelled of frying doughnuts, livestock bedding, and anticipation. In the Home and Apiary Arts Hall, exhibitors buzzed about with final entries. She registered under Hazel Harkness, Owlbrook Honey, then wandered the aisle, ostensibly admiring competition. Albie Craven waved from behind a stack of gleaming jars. His label read, Craven's Country Gold, Limited Lavender Reserve. Hazel's pulse skipped. She unscrewed a sample jar, dipped the tasting stick, and let a drop rest on her tongue. Bright lavender opened first, then thyme, ending in a citrus flourish she could recognize, blindfolded. Hers. Albie watched her reaction, face tense. That's quite something, Hazel said calmly. Didn't know you kept lavender stands. New experiment, he muttered. Borrowed some fields near Haverbridge. She thanked him and moved on, mind racing. Perhaps Albie had purchased her stolen honey from someone, unaware of its origin. Or perhaps he was the thief and brazen enough to display the evidence. Yet Hazel noticed something else. The honey was faintly smoky. Her bees never smoked inside the hive. The note suggested recent exposure to a hot box, possibly to mask origin. She needed proof beyond palate. Evidence of her queens, marked with tiny blue paint dots on their thoraxes. She doubted Albie would open frames for her midday, but after hours, when the grounds closed. Hazel drove home, gathered supplies, her spare veil, smoker, a vial of Queen Marker paint, and her grandmother's biscuit tin now filled with sardines in sunflower oil. Button trailed her, sensing adventure. That night, storm clouds smothered the moon. At 10, Hazel parked beside a hedge behind the fairgrounds, tugged on a dark jacket, and slipped through a gap in the fencing. She knew the perimeter well from years of selling wax polish. The apiary demonstration area sat near the agricultural barns, screened by hay bales. Public education hives, observation boxes with plexiglass panels, were brought in each year. As Hazel drew closer, she caught the unmistakable saccharine tang of fed syrup mixed with smoke. A flashlight bobbed inside the tent. She crouched. 2 silhouettes worked over hive boxes stacked 3 high. A woman's voice brisk. Easy now, the queen's in the centre frame. Hazel recognized the timbre. Harriet Pike. A man answered, a low grunt Hazel couldn't place. They slid a frame into a glass observation hive. The bees inside were placid, as though drowsy. Sugar syrup, Hazel realized. Excessively fed bees stayed calm even in strange surroundings. She waited until the pair exited the tent, lugging empty feeders toward the supply shed. Then she slipped inside. There, under red canvas, stood her 3 blue-striped hives. The identification numbers she'd burned into the cedar rims were scraped, but the faint scorches remained. She cracked the top, shone her penlight, and smiled with relief. Blue paint glimmered on the queen, a soft whine behind her. Button, having nosed through the flap, wagged eagerly. Hazel's heart jolted, not from her dog's appearance, but from the figure looming in the now open doorway, Albie Craven. "What in blazes, Hazel?" he hissed. She stepped forward, blocking his view of the hives. "I could ask you the same." He lifted his palms. "Harriet asked if I'd supply honey for the baking finals, offered generous pay. When I saw the yield, I suspected the bees weren't hers, but I didn't ask. So you bottled it as your own." He flushed. "I needed that prize money. Mum's surgeries." Hazel's sympathy flickered but held. "You're aiding theft." Albie's gaze darted over her shoulder. "Harriet said the original owner went bankrupt, equipment abandoned." "That original owner is me," Hazel said quietly. Albie blanched. Before she could press, footsteps approached. Harriet Pike strode in, still in fluorescent martial vest, flashlight swinging. Her eyes widened at the tableau. Hazel, Albie, the revealed hives. Her expression hardened in an instant. "You weren't supposed to be here until morning, Albie." She turned to Hazel, smile thin as wire. "And you, mistress of bees, up past your bedtime." Hazel kept her tone even. "Return my hives, Harriet, and I won't involve police." Harriet laughed, shrill, brittle. "Police? Your friend Finch? He's busy cataloguing jam jars. Besides, I've done nothing illegal. These hives were abandoned." Hazel opened the film canister of collected resin. "Pine resin infused with cedar shavings from my workshop, identical to what's on these entrance blocks. I'll match wood grain to my scrap. That's possession of stolen property." Harriet's nostrils flared. "You think a country constable understands evidence chains? The hives stay until the fair ends. The children's bee education program depends on them. You wouldn't deprive them, would you?" Hazel stepped aside, so Harriet could see the blue-blazed queen. "I named her Guinevere, bred from Arthur, my late husband's last project. She's gentle, productive, and rightfully mine." Harriet's facade cracked. "I needed gentle bees," she said, voice wobbling. "The old demonstration stock was aggressive. A kid got stung last year. Insurance threatened to pull coverage. I tried buying nukes, but suppliers were short. Then I heard you had more colonies than you could count." "So you hired someone to steal them," Hazel finished. "Who was it?" "Not Albie. He'd bungled the straps. Someone who knows bees." A shadow shifted beyond the tent. The second silhouette. In stepped Rupert Finch, minus uniform jacket. Hazel's mouth went dry. "Rupert?" The constable avoided her eyes. "Harriet said it was for the community, Hazel. Better than letting your fancy queens just sit there." "You filed my report," she protested. "I had to make it look official," he muttered. "No harm done. You'll get them back after the fair." Albie swore under his breath. "I didn't sign up for this." Harriet rounded on him. "Oh, yes, you did. You wanted your mother's surgery funds, and Rupert wanted his overtime hours reinstated. We all benefit, including Hazel when she wins publicity for lending her bees." Hazel steadied herself with a breath of warm, propolis-scented air. Publicity won't replace the stress on my colonies. Moving hives during nectar flow can trigger swarming or lost queens. You risked their lives. Harriet's gaze darted between them, calculating. Look, it's done. Tomorrow we unveil the exhibit. Kids love it, the press loves it. After judging, we transport the hives back. I'll even pay a rental fee. Button growled, low and unwavering. Hazel shook her head. No, you'll return them tonight. Rupert stepped forward. Let's be sensible. I am, Hazel replied. I'm giving you a chance. Help load my hives, and I'll tell the parish council the misunderstanding arose from poor communication, nothing more. Harriet folded her arms. And if we don't? Hazel unscrewed the lid of the sardine tin. The fishy aroma mingled with warm honey, a scent bees loathed. Instantly, workers emerged from the glass observation hive, agitated. Hazel, Albie hissed, backing away. She placed the open tin atop the observation hive. If the bees fully wake and smell this, they'll pour out looking for the intruder. Without my smoker, it'll be chaos. I don't want that, but I will not leave without my colonies. Harriet's bluff collapsed. You're mad. Obsessive, Hazel corrected. About my girls. Rupert scrambled for the smoker, but Hazel had taken the bellows top when she entered. Bees pinged against the glass, buzzing louder. Fine, Harriet shouted over the growing hum. Help her, Rupert. We'll move them. Within minutes they were outside, loading the blue hives into Hazel's Land Rover. Button supervised from the passenger seat. Albie, contrite, helped secure ratchet straps. As dawn brushed the sky, Hazel turned to Rupert. I'll inform the council about your part, but I'll emphasize coercion, provided you resign fair security. He nodded, sheepish. Harriet stood apart, high-visibility vest reflecting the sunrise, eyes red. I only wanted the fair to succeed, she said quietly. Last year's insurance payout nearly killed us. Hazel's anger cooled enough to hear the tremor of desperation. Then ask next time. I'd have lent nucleus colonies and overseen them myself. Harriet managed a rueful smile. I suppose it's too late for that goodwill. Not entirely, Hazel said. I'll return with 3 nukes this afternoon under my care. You'll sign a borrowing agreement, donate your Marshall stipend to Albie's mum's medical fund, and publicly credit Albrook apiaries. Deal? Tears glittered in Harriet's eyes, but she nodded. Deal. Albie gaped. Hazel, you'd still help. Bees teach cooperation, Hazel said, climbing into the driver's seat. Sting when you must, but prefer harmony. Button barked agreement. Back at Owlbrook Glen the sun rose full, lighting the meadow like poured gold. Hazel set her hives on their stands, opened the entrances, and watched her bees spill out in shimmering clouds. They oriented, read the map of sky and scent, and resumed work as though no conspiracy had uprooted them overnight. Later that afternoon, Hazel delivered 3 small hives, each marked clearly on loan, to the county fair, along with educational posters and safety veils for children. The local paper snapped photos of Bee Lady Saves Fair. Harriet kept her end of the bargain. Albie withdrew his lavender reserve from judging and instead helped teach visitors how to taste varietal honeys. Saturday evening, Hazel stood beside Marjorie at the display. A little girl sampled honey, eyes widening. Mummy, it tastes like flowers. Hazel smiled, harmony restored. In the end, her own heather jar won first prize, though the ribbon felt secondary to the greater victory. Her queens thriving at home, her community wiser, and thanks to a sticky conspiracy unravelled, a honey-sweet peace settling over Bramblewick hamlet like summer dusk.